Hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. And today I'm going to show you the complete roster for the Saints, our first 53-man roster of the year. This is what we've cut down to by Tuesday, 3 o'clock p.m. And this roster will probably change over the course of the next week to week and a half. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10. You'll get all the changes as they occur. And this is it. This is the complete list of the players we've released. So here it is. All 34 players that we've let go. So we'll look at the list real quick and then we'll take a look at the complete roster, offense and defense. First, let's look at these cuts slash waves. We've gotten rid of quarterback Jake Hayner. We've gotten rid of three running backs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Cam Akers and Marcus Yarns. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a guy that we're probably going to try to keep on the practice squad. Players on the practice squad can be elevated to the active roster up to 3 times a year before they have to be placed on the active roster. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is one of those prime candidates to be on the practice squad and to get elevated as needed. And we'll go more into those details when we look at the full roster. Next, we're going to talk about the wide receivers that were released. Dante Pettis, Kevin Austin, Moochie Dixon, and Roderick Daniels. The big surprise out of the wide receivers is, of course, Dante Pettis, who is a return specialist. We've kept Velus Jones Jr. at running back, who is a good kick returner, but Velus Jones hasn't done a lot of punt returning in his life. We know Rashid Shaheed's our number one return man, but when it comes to returning all of the punts, I'm not sure if we have someone else lined up after Rashid. Pettis was a punt returner and a kick returner. Yeah, we'll have to see what happens as far as that goes. At tight end, we've released Michael Jacobson, Trayton Welch, and Seth Green. I know a lot of fans wanted to see Trayton Welch make the team. He doesn't, and I'm assuming we're going to try to get him on the practice squad. More about Welch when we look at the tight ends that we've kept. On the offensive line, we've released 3 tackles. Josiah Ezerim, pardon me, Jonathan Mendoza, and Easton Kilty, who was highlighting as a guard too during the preseason. We've released 2 interior offensive linemen, Shane Lemieux and Kyle Hergel, and Mike Panasiuk. Three interior offensive linemen. The big surprise for me there is Lemieux. We'll talk about the offensive line when we look at the full roster. Those are your offensive players, 17 of them, and we've released 17 defensive players. 6 that can be considered defensive ends or edge rushers. Jonah Williams, Isaiah Foskey, Fadil Diggs, Josheen Davis, Jeremiah Martin, and Amari Thomas. The big surprise in this list, not Foskey, is Fadil Diggs. Fadil Diggs is the only draft pick that did not, from this past draft, that did not make the Saints roster. We value Diggs, and I'm assuming we're going to try to get him on the practice squad. Jonah Williams is another guy that may be a practice squad candidate. At defensive tackle, we've released Jaden Peavy. We've released outside linebacker Tyreen Peavy. Jaden Peavy, pardon me. Outside linebacker Tyreen Powell is what I meant to say. And inside linebackers Nefi Sewell and DeMarco Jackson. Both of them good special teamers. Both of them have a lot of time at linebacker. It would not surprise me to see Sewell make the practice squad. At cornerback, we've released Rico Payton, Jaden Price, and Dallas Beanham. Rico Payton was dealing with an injury. I'm assuming he's a prime practice squad candidate. At safety, we released Tyrell Burgess and Elliot Davison. Tyrell Burgess was playing that nickel role. He was number 3 on the depth chart, and Burgess can highlight at safety as well. So Burgess may be a practice squad candidate. We've also released Charlie Smith, the kicker, and James Burnip, the punter. Charlie Smith can be retained on the practice squad if no one wants to claim him. And he will be a roster exempt on the practice squad. So he would make the 17th player on a 16-player practice squad if we're able to keep Charlie Smith around. So those are the guys we have released in total. And yeah, there's a couple of them that are surprising. The Jake Hayner, pretty surprising. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think we're going to try to keep him around. Dante Pettis is kind of a surprise. Trayton Welch, kind of a surprise. In my opinion, getting rid of Mendoza and Lemieux might have been a misstep. We'll see. And on the defensive side, Fadil Diggs as an edge rusher was somebody I really liked. Sewell is another guy I think we need to keep around. Rico Payton at cornerback, of course. And Terrell Burgess, good backup safety. So that's the players we released. And now we're going to take a look at the complete offense and the complete defense. And we're going to talk about the moves and we're going to talk about what I think the Saints are thinking. So here's the offense first. All right, the quarterback has been named. Starting quarterback Spencer Rattler is going to be the man, at least for the time being, with Tyler Shuck as his backup. I think Rattler's going to get a bit of a long leash, probably 4 to 6 games. We finished 2-4 after the first 6 games, and then we'll probably throw Shuck in there. That's what I'm assuming right now. If Rattler plays really well, yeah, it's going to be a long while before Shuck gets his turn to play. And if you don't see Shuck for at least half the season, then you're not really going to be sure what you have in Shuck. So I think Rattler gives you your best chance to win right out of the gate. And I think after about 6 games, you need to reevaluate where you're at. Those first 4 games are pretty tough this year. Rattler would struggle, probably Shuck would struggle as well. If you can get out of the first 6 games around 2-4 or 3-3, then maybe the leash gets a little longer for Rattler. But yeah, I think you're putting off the inevitable. Shuck's going to need at least some time to prove whether he's the QB of the future or not. So we'll see what happens at quarterback. Another thing I want to bring up is Kellen Moore was talking about having 3 quarterbacks in the room, maybe even 4. And what I thought he meant at first was try to get Jake Hayner back onto the active roster once there's a spot available. Bring Hayner back to the active roster as your third quarterback, and then have Hunter Deckers on the practice squad as your fourth quarterback. I thought that's what Moore meant at first. I'm starting to think that maybe we're going to try to put Hayner on the practice squad and actually sign another quarterback to be our third guy. Maybe Easton Stick, who just got released by the Falcons. Maybe Stick comes in and he's on the roster, or maybe Stick ends up on the practice squad. So I think Easton Stick is part of the mix here. I know we want to think Hunter Deckers is going to turn into something better than Jake Hayner. But yeah, I think those are the 3 quarterbacks at play here. When Moore talks about having 4 bodies in the room, he's talking about 2 quarterbacks on the practice squad, or he's talking about a third quarterback on this active roster and a extra guy on the practice squad. So, and I think between Hayner and Stick and Deckers, That's the guys we're talking about. At running back, it came out exactly the way I thought it would. Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, Devin Neal, Velus Jones Jr. If anybody in the running back room gets injured, you bring up Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire can be elevated up to 3 times. Hopefully, we don't have to deal with a lot of injuries in the running back room, but we know the history of Kendre Miller. Kamara's been known to miss a couple of games a year. Devin Neal is a 6th-round rookie, and although he looks ready for the part, he's probably still got a learning curve. And Velus Jones Jr. is a special guy. He'll be an X-Factor type at the running back / wide receiver spot. And mostly, I think Jones has been kept for his special teams. But anybody between Kamara, Miller, and Neal, if any of them have a setback, then you're bringing Clyde Edwards-Helaire up. And if there's an injury concern and it happens to go for a while, then you're probably going to have to take your lumps and put a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire on your active roster. We'll see how that turns out. At wide receiver, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, Devon Vele, Mason Tipton, and the 6th wide receiver, Cedric Wilson. I thought the 6th wide receiver would be Dante Pettis because of his return ability. I also think Pettis is a better overall receiver than Wilson. But the train of thought for the Saints here is that Vele has a bad knee. You never know when the big bodied receiver is going to be inactive. And if that's the case, you've got another big body in Cedric Wilson to take Vele's place. Basically, a big bodied run blocker type who can actually run slants and contested catches in the middle of the field. I'm assuming Vele's going to be better at this than Wilson. But I think that's why we kept Wilson around. I think Wilson's one another. I think Wilson is the type of guy that you can eventually cut during the season, and no one's going to grab him, and you can put him on the practice squad. So you keep Wilson for the time being as a security blanket in case Vele has some struggles. And then if you have to make a roster move later on, perhaps Wilson's a target to release and then retain on the practice squad eventually. Something like that, because we can exist with 5 receivers as long as Vele's healthy, as long as everyone's healthy. Olave, Rashid, Brandon Cooks, they've all had injury issues in their past, so we'll see how it turns out. But this is the first 53, and that's kind of a surprise to me, Wilson. All right, at tight end, Juwan Johnson, Jack Stoll, Molike Mataval. The reason why I think we kept Mataval instead of Welch. So this is the deal. Juwan Johnson, 6'4", 231 pounds. So Johnson is a big receiver, but he's not very big for a tight end. At 231 pounds, he's just not physically imposing enough to handle everything that's going to come at him from a blocking standpoint. Juwan Johnson can get as technically awesome as he needs to be a run blocking tight end. But if you're just 231 pounds, I don't think you're physically gifted enough to handle all of it. Most of the pressure that Johnson's going to face as a blocker, 231 pounds, most of the pressure he'll face is going to come from guys that are anywhere from 240 to 280. So at 231, he'll struggle. Jack Stoll, on the other hand, is 6'4", 247. So yeah, he's got about 16 more pounds on him. So Welch would be a better run blocker potentially than Johnson because he's a bigger dude. They're the same height. He's just got 17 more pounds on him. But Welch is, like Johnson, a wide receiver, former wide receiver turned tight end. So Welch has a little more girth. Uh, I'm sorry, Welch is 6'3", 241. So Welch is about 10 pounds heavier than Johnson, but still a converted wide receiver. It's Jack Stoll that's 6'4", 247. So Stoll is the guy that's got the 17 pounds on Johnson. Stoll's the best run blocker right now out of the bunch. So what about Maliki Mataval? 6'6", 261. Mataval is a decent run blocker and a decent receiver, and he's a rookie and he's just going to get better. He's a much bigger body at tight end than all the other tight ends we have. So, okay, so here's my train of thought. Johnson's your receiving tight end, not much of a blocker. You keep Jack Stoll because he is a good blocker at 247. Stoll's not as great of a wide receiver, but he's getting better. And he can be okay. Monteval looks like he can be a great receiver and he's physically imposing at 261 to be a great run blocker. So, okay, here's my point at tight end. Foster Moreau's going to come back. And when Morrow comes back, do you keep four tight ends or do you cut someone? I venture to guess that if Welch was on this team instead of Monteval, when Foster Moreau comes back, I think you still keep Stahl as that run blocker. You got Morrow as the complete guy. Morrow, by the way, is 251, 6'4", 251. So Morrow comes back. I think Welch might be a cut candidate at that point because Stahl is your blocking guy. So if you keep Monteval at 6'6", 261 pounds, Monteval might develop in the next couple of weeks into a better run blocker. You know, he's showing improvement throughout the offseason. He's such a big dude. When Foster Moreau comes back at tight end, there's a chance you could flirt with the notion of letting Stoll go and keeping Monteval if you can develop enough as a run blocker. But you would never keep Trayton Welch as a run blocker. See what I mean? So I think there's a possibility that whether you had Monteval or Welch, once Morrow comes back, either one of them gets released. But I think there's a bigger chance Monteval stays on the team ahead of Stoll because of the size. Okay, that's my breakdown for tight end. That's the way I'm looking at it. I'm bummed that Trayton Welch didn't make the team, but when Foster Moreau comes back, I think either Welch or Monteval might be gone anyway. There's a chance Monteval stays ahead of Stoll. That's what I'm thinking. All right, offensive line. At tackle, you got Kelvin Banks Jr. and Taliesin Fuanga. And then you had nobody else because you released everyone. I mean, Barry Wesley is on temporary IR right now. Wesley played left tackle in preseason. I don't know if he can swing around and play right tackle or not. I don't recall seeing Wesley play right tackle at all. We had Mendoza at right tackle and Wesley at left tackle for most of the preseason. For the majority of the snaps in preseason, those were your tackles. So for us to get rid of Mendoza and put Wesley on IR, temporary IR, and then trade for Richards, to me was a crazy thing. I know you're only trading a 6th round pick 3 years from now, and you're getting a 7th round pick that same year in return. So you claim a guy that was going to get released anyway in Richards. Is Richards good enough to play left and right side? I don't know. I don't know if he's a swing tackle or not. You need a swing tackle because you don't have a backup right tackle right now, unless you throw Penning out there. If something happens to Fuanga, you throw Penning out there. You might do that. So is Richards a swing guy? Is Richards good enough to make this team? Barry Wesley's on the temporary IR. When Wesley comes back, if Richards hasn't shown you enough, then there's a chance you're cutting Richards and keeping Wesley. There's a chance. Now Wesley comes back off of IR and you decide Richards is better and you keep Richards, then you get rid of Wesley after he's off IR or keep him on IR permanently, one of those things. But I think the trade for a backup tackle right now is kind of goofy. There's free agents out there and we have money. We need a free agent, veteran type who doesn't have a job now, who's willing to take a job, and we go and sign a free agent tackle and we have our problem at backup tackle solved. A veteran who has swing ability. Doesn't really matter how good he is. I mean, how good is Richards? I don't know. We're going to see. We traded for him. So I hope Richards makes this team. I hope when Wesley comes back from injury, Richards is so good we can't get rid of him. I just don't see that happening with a guy that was going to get cut by the Cowboys. Now, you might not see success in a backup tackle from a free agent that's been on the market this whole time either. But there are veteran free agents tackles out there. I think that was the move the Saints should have made. You don't trade for Richards. You go and sign a veteran tackle. If you don't, if you don't trade for Richards, you don't sign a veteran tackle. You needed to keep at least somebody else. I thought Mendoza at right tackle and Wesley at left tackle, and then you go and get a veteran. When you finally secure that, then you can let Mendoza go. And, at this point, Wesley's on IR. But I think if you went and signed a free agent backup tackle, he would be better than Richards or Wesley. So that's my issue with backup tackle. I just hope Richards turns out to be worth it. Because even though you're only trading a 6th round pick 3 years from now, you're still trading an asset. We also traded an asset in Colin Saunders and in return got Luke Fortner at center. That's another spot on the offensive line. I would have done it differently. If Fortner looks like he can develop into something, fine. But just like Richards, Fortner was a guy that was getting released by his team. So is Fortner really better than Shane Lemieux at backup center? It's possible. It's also possible that we just put Simpkins at center since we kept him. We put Simpkins at center instead of Fortner. And wouldn't that be a waste of a roster spot if that were the case? I mean, I'd rather have Shane Lemieux. At least Shane Lemieux can play guard and center. I don't know if Fortner can play center and guard. So I'm confused about the Fortner keep, especially if something happens to McCoy and we see Simpkins go out there. That would be kind of wild. But other than that, at guard, you've got Trevor Penning, Cesar Ruiz, Dylan Reduns, Torricelli, Simpkins. I'm hoping Simpkins is so good at guard that he starts pushing Cesar Ruiz because I think Cesar Ruiz is regressing. And right now, Trevor Penning's out, so your starter at left guard's Reduns. If something happens to Cesar Ruiz or Simpkins, let's say Cesar Ruiz gets hurt and then something happens to Simpkins. I guess Dylan Reduns goes to right tackle at that point. Then your starters are Trevor Penning and Dylan Reduns, and you have no backup guard because you kept Fortner instead of Lemieux. So anyway, that's my issues with the offensive line. I don't think you should have traded for a backup offensive tackle. I think you should have gone and spent some money and got Mekhi Becton or, any of the other free agent tackles that are out there and you know, those types. Even if you're spending 5 or 6 million for the guy to come in for 1 year as a backup, you have the money. You have very limited draft capital. All right, that is your offense. And now let's look at the first 53 defense. Defensive end came out the way I thought it would. Brian Bresee, Nathan Shepard, Vernon Broughton, Jonathan Bullard. At defensive tackle, Devon Gottschall and Christian Boyd. We have kept John Ridgeway on IR. It's temporary IR. Once John Ridgeway comes back, well, where does he fit on this line? I doubt if you keep three nose tackle types. Devin Gottschall and Christian Boyd, yeah. But where does John Ridgeway fit? Maybe we value Ridgeway on this defensive line more than Nathan Shepard or Jonathan Bullard. Maybe when Ridgeway comes back, that's where we find a place for him. We cut Bullard or cut Shepard. I just think John Ridgeway is going to end up on IR for the whole year. I haven't seen much from Ridgeway in the year and a half, or the year that we had him last year, and then the off season this year. Christian Boyd stayed ahead of Ridgeway on the depth chart this whole time. It's interesting to keep Ridgeway on that temporary IR designation because if he comes back, whose place does he take? At outside linebacker slash edge rusher, we've got Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Cameron Jordan, and Chris Rump. Fadil Diggs was an option to keep, and we didn't. We didn't make the room for him. So we've got four true edge rushers here. And yeah, that'll be interesting. I think Fadil Diggs ends up on the practice squad for sure, as Diggs is the only draft pick from this class we didn't keep. We kept 8 rookies in our draft class. We kept 10 rookies total. when you count punter Kai Kroger, and you also have to count Torricelli Simpkins, who was undrafted. So yeah, this team has 10 rookies on it. Might be a Saints record. Inside linebacker came out exactly the way I thought it would. Demario Davis, Pete Werner, Danny Stutzman, Jalen Ford, Isaiah Stallbird. I like it. I think you keep Nephi Sewell on the practice squad. You kiss DeMarco Jackson goodbye, and we are set at linebacker. At cornerback, we've got Alontae Taylor, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Isaac Yadam, Quincy Riley, Rajon Wright, and Ugo Amadi. Amadi can be counted as a cornerback or a safety. And then, oh yeah, Amadi's your primary backup nickel. So if Taylor's not ready to start the season, Amadi's going to be your nickel back. I hope Taylor's ready to roll. This team's going to look different when Taylor's out there, I think. Although I do love Amadi. I like the cornerback room a lot. This is exactly the way I thought it would turn out. And at safety, we've got Justin Reed, Julian Blackman, Jonas Sanker, Jordan Howden, and JT Gray. Keeping Gray was a surprise for me. Other than that, I had the DBs figured out just right. So I was pretty close on defense. Everything I picked came out exactly the way I thought it would, except keeping JT Gray. So if you're a safety on this team, your name has to start with J. Justin, Julian, Jonas, Jordan, and JT Gray. Yeah, so that is our defense, and not too many surprises there for me. All right, your special teamers are kicker Blake Grupe, punter Kai Kroger, and long snapper Zach Wood. So that is your complete roster, offense and defense. You guys let me know in the comments what you think about these moves. Where do you think the Saints messed up? Think that we're still going to be in the market for an offensive lineman. So, yeah, we traded for Richards. We've got Wesley on IR. I just hope Richards turns out to be something special because we could have gone and got a veteran free agent if we're just going to be dealing with a guy like Richards or Fortner, who, in my opinion, just seem to be bottom of the barrel, bottom of the roster type guys. Do you really want Richards starting games for you at tackle if somebody gets hurt? There's a chance if one of our starting tackles gets hurt that we're in the market in free agency for a tackle. So, yeah, I wasn't happy with some of the decisions on the offensive line. But other than that, nothing too shocking. So let me know in the comments how you feel about it. I'm Joe. Subscribe to Rosenpill 10. It's free, and I'll be talking about the Saints all off season and all regular season and all postseason if it's in the pictures for the Saints, and we'll see. I'll have a video next week or week after, maybe later this week, predicting all kinds of stuff for the regular season to come, including who's going to have the most sacks, the most interceptions, all that good stuff. So subscribe. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?